My name is Detective Pierce. I've seen enough of the world to know that certain doors should never be opened, and yet I keep finding the keys. This case began with a letter, and signed, written in uneven strokes of ink that bled through the paper as if written in haste. The carnival comes with the eclipse. It takes what it is owed. If you value your life, do not go near the grounds when the shadow falls. That was all. No address, no signature, no explanation. Ordinarily, I might have dismissed it as a prank, the kind of local superstition that finds its way into every corner of the country. But the envelope had been slipped under my office door without a stamp, and the handwriting bore a desperate hand. Someone had walked right up to my door, left it there, and vanished. The next day, a notice crossed my desk. 2 missing persons reported from a small town on the outskirts of Blackwood County. Both last seen near the ruins of a carnival ground that hadn't been in use for decades. That was enough for me. The carnival lay on the edge of marshland, at the end of a road that dissolved into mud after half a mile. My car groaned as its tires dragged through the muck, but finally the skeletal silhouette of the fairground emerged ahead. The Ferris wheel was the first thing I saw. Its metal frame rose against the sky like a great rusted ribcage, every spoke sagging, every car swaying faintly though the air was still. The midway stretched beyond it, collapsed tents, broken stalls, faded signs promising prizes long since rotted away. A cracked carousel leaned to one side, its wooden horses pealing, eyes wide and glassy as though they knew something I did not. I stepped out of the car and the ground gave a soft hiss beneath my boots. The marsh had claimed most of the lot, water seeping up in stagnant pools. The smell was a mixture of rust, mold, and something sweet that didn't belong. There were no birds here. No insects either. Only silence, so complete it seemed manufactured. I walked further in, my flashlight cutting through the dim haze. The eclipse wasn't due for another 2 days, but already the sky seemed unnaturally dim, the sun hanging low as though reluctant to shine here. The missing persons report mentioned a girl named Evelyn Ross, 17 years old, last seen with a friend named Matthew Haynes, 20. Their parents insisted they hadn't run away. Too much talk about the eclipse, too many dares. Teenagers. And yet, when I looked at the fairground, I couldn't shake the feeling that whatever had lured them here wasn't ordinary bravado. I found my first trace of them near the ticket booth. The glass was long since shattered, and inside I spotted a torn backpack strap caught on a nail. Fresh. Evelyn's mother had described her bag exactly. I jotted the detail in my notebook and pressed on. That's when I heard it. A creak, followed by a hollow laugh. I froze. My hand went instinctively to the revolver under my coat. The sound had come from the carousel. Slowly I approached. The horses were motionless, chipped and weather-beaten. But the platform beneath them, it shifted. I could swear it shifted, as though turning by fractions of an inch. I leaned closer, and the horse nearest me blinked. Its eyelid was a thin film of paint, cracking as it slid down over a black, depthless orb. My pulse surged, but when I staggered back, the carousel stood still again, wood and paint, nothing more. Hallucination, I told myself. Trick of the light. Yet as I turned away, I saw fresh footprints in the mud, 2 sets, leading deeper into the carnival. I followed. The footprints wound toward the funhouse, a leaning structure of mirrors and painted clowns. Its facade was smeared with rot, colors bleeding into each other like melting wax. Above the door, a sign still clung to its frame. Step right up to laugh forever. The letters dripped as though painted in something wetter than ink. The footprints ended at the threshold. I pulled out my flashlight and stepped inside. The air was colder here, damp with mildew. Broken glass crunched underfoot, The mirrors cracked into webs that reflected me in fragments. My own eye stared back from one shard, my hand from another. But between those reflections, something moved. I swept the light across the corridor. Nothing. Just walls warped by decay. Then a giggle, high and brittle. It echoed from the mirrors, not the hallway itself. I aimed the beam again, and in the fractured glass I saw two figures, teenagers, a boy and a girl. They weren't standing in the hallway. They were standing in the mirror. Pale, their eyes wide, mouths open as if screaming, though no sound emerged. Evelyn and Matthew. I lunged toward the glass, but as soon as I touched it, the surface rippled like water, swallowing their faces into distortion. When the reflection cleared, they were gone. In their place, another image appeared. Me? Not as I was, but older, with eyes hollowed black, my hand reaching for my own throat. The glass cracked under my touch. I staggered back, revolver in hand. The mirrors rattled in unison, laughter spilling from them like wind chimes caught in a storm. Then silence. Utter silence. I exited the funhouse shaken, my flashlight flickering. The sun had sunk lower, though barely an hour had passed. The fairground seemed darker now, the shadows stretching unnaturally long. As I returned to the midway, I noticed something new. The Ferris wheel was turning. Slowly, creaking, its rusted frame groaned as though pulled by invisible hands. No wind. No electricity. Yet each car swayed as if filled with unseen passengers. And in the highest car, half shrouded by shadow, a figure sat. Still. Watching. I lifted my flashlight, but before the beam reached that height, the wheel stopped. The figure was gone. I drew a long breath, steadying my nerves. The eclipse was still 2 days away. Yet the carnival was already awake. And it wanted an audience. The carnival didn't feel like a ruin anymore. It felt like a stage. And I had just been cast into its show. I returned to the car to review my notes, though I kept glancing at the midway as if it might rearrange itself when I looked away. The missing teenagers were the priority. Yet I couldn't ignore the letter slipped beneath my office door. Someone had known this was coming. Someone wanted me here. The carnival had been abandoned nearly 30 years ago, after a fire gutted half the grounds. Official reports listed the cause as faulty wiring. But even a cursory glance through archived newspapers told a different story. Unexplained accidents, vanishings, talk of unnatural shadows during the fire itself. The place hadn't reopened since. I left the car again and began moving toward the administration office, a small building set back from the midway. Its door hung on broken hinges, the inside cluttered with old ledgers and mildew-stained posters. I rifled through the debris until I found a ledger marked 1972 to 1975. Inside were lists of employees, ticket sales, and schedules. But near the back, a different kind of record emerged. Names. Dozens of them, written in a different hand. No dates, no explanations. Just a list. And halfway down, Evelyn Ross. Matthew Haynes. The ink was still wet. I closed the book, jaw tightening. The missing kids had been written into the carnival's history before anyone else even knew they were gone. That's when I heard a shuffle behind me. I spun, revolver raised. An old man stood in the doorway, gaunt, wrapped in a heavy coat that smelled of damp straw. His eyes gleamed too brightly for someone his age. "You shouldn't be here," he rasped. "Neither should you," I said, though I kept the gun steady. "Who are you?" He stepped further inside, ignoring the weapon. "Caretaker. Been watching the grounds since the fire. Somebody has to." "Caretaker," I repeated. "Then you know about the disappearances." His lips curled into something that wasn't quite a smile. "They didn't disappear. They were taken. Same as the others. Always when the shadow comes. The eclipse? I said. He nodded. The carnival doesn't run on steam or wires. It runs on blood. Every 20 years or so, the sky darkens, and it opens again. And the hungry come. Who are the hungry? I pressed. His eyes darted to the midway. Not for me to say. Only for me to tend the grounds, keep the fences mended, the gates closed. But they always find a way in. Always. And the letter? I asked. You put it under my door? He shook his head slowly. Wasn't me. But whoever did, they wanted you to be here when the curtain rose. I studied him. His story fit too neatly into the pattern I was already uncovering. Still, there was something about him, an edge of sincerity buried beneath the madness. What about Evelyn and Matthew? I asked. Are they alive? The caretaker's gaze flicked downward. For now. I left him in the office, though not without warning him that I'd be back for answers. His cryptic talk unsettled me, but my instincts told me he wasn't lying. Back on the midway, the sky dimmed further. Clouds passed, swallowing the sun until the carnival lay in gloom. The Ferris wheel loomed motionless once more. The carousel sagged in silence. Yet the footprints of the missing teens called me deeper. They led to the fortune teller's tent. The canvas flapped faintly, though no wind stirred. I pushed inside. The air was close, heavy with dust and incense long since turned acrid. At the center sat a round table with a cracked crystal ball. Cards lay scattered across the cloth, their faces warped and unrecognizable. Figures with too many eyes, symbols that shifted when I stared too long. But it wasn't the cards that held my attention. It was the mirror behind the table. A full-length glass, framed in gold leaf eaten by rust. Its surface shimmered faintly, though no light struck it. I approached, raising the flashlight. The beam didn't reflect. It vanished into the glass as though swallowed. And then I saw them again. Evelyn and Matthew. They were closer this time, standing just beyond the glass. Their lips moved soundlessly, their palms pressed flat against the surface. Behind them stretched not the tent, but something vast and dark, studded with faint glimmers like lanterns underwater. I pressed closer. The girl's lips formed a word. Help! My hand brushed the mirror. The surface rippled cool as water. I felt the faintest pull, as though the glass itself longed to drag me inside. Then a shadow passed behind them. Not a person. Not even human. A towering figure bent low, its limbs jointed wrong, its head crowned with horns of bone. Its hand reached for Evelyn's shoulder. The mirror cracked. The image shattered into a dozen fragments. And the tent collapsed around me. I staggered out into the open air, coughing through the dust. The canvas smoldered as though it had been soaked in ash. The mirror was gone. And the midway was no longer silent. Music drifted on the air. Calliope notes, faint but steady. The carousel was turning again. And this time, it didn't stop. The horses rose and fell in rhythm, their chipped jaws clattering in grotesque imitation of laughter. The lights along the rim flickered on, dim bulbs that hadn't worked in decades now glowing with a sickly pallor. The Ferris wheel followed, its creak swelling into a steady groan. The carnival had come alive. But not for me. For the eclipse. And the audience it was gathering in the dark. The carousel spun, its cracked horses frozen in grins that revealed too many teeth. The music, warped and off-key, throbbed through the midway. I had heard Calliope music before, this wasn't it. This was something else imitating it, something that didn't quite understand joy but tried anyway. I ducked behind a concession stand, peering around the rotted wood. The caretaker hadn't been lying. The carnival wasn't just a ruin, It was a living thing. And it was waking up. The Ferris wheel groaned higher, its carriages swaying as if burdened by unseen passengers. Lights blinked across its rim, flashing in patterns that twisted like constellations. But the worst sound was the laughter. It didn't come from children. It didn't come from families. It rose from empty spaces, from shadows that had no mouths. Hollow, echoing, spilling from the rides themselves. I forced myself out from cover and moved down the midway, revolver drawn. I wasn't hunting flesh and blood killers anymore. I was walking through the throat of something that fed differently. And then I noticed the posters. They had been blank earlier, just scraps of moldy paper clinging to cracked boards. Now they bore fresh ink, bright and wet. Each displayed a face. Some were older, sepia-toned children, long-forgotten carnivals. Some were recent. Evelyn, Matthew, and others. Names I didn't recognize, faces pale with terror, pressed flat against the paper as if the posters themselves had devoured them. One of the posters shifted. A child's eyes blinked from the page. Her mouth moved, silent at first, then a faint hiss slipped out. "Detective!" I staggered back, heart pounding. The face on the poster smiled. And then it screamed. The sound rattled the midway, set the Ferris wheel turning faster, sent the carousel shrieking into overdrive. I clamped my hands over my ears, but the scream wasn't just sound, it was inside me, clawing at bone. When it stopped, I was on my knees, breath coming in ragged bursts. The posters were blank again. I stumbled into the game stalls, trying to regain composure. Rows of prizes still hung where they had 30 years ago. Faded teddy bears, plastic rings, glassy-eyed dolls with cracked faces. One of the dolls tilted its head. I froze. Its glass eyes rolled, following me. Its smile split wider, seemed straining as porcelain cracked. I fired. The revolver's shot echoed across the carnival. The doll shattered, fragments spilling across the counter. But the others, all of them, turned their heads at once. Hundreds of eyes fixed on me. And then they began to laugh. I bolted from the stalls, boots hammering the cracked pavement. The midway blurred, rides and tents shifting around me like the whole carnival was rearranging itself. Every direction twisted me back toward the Ferris wheel. It loomed above me, its carriages rattling violently. And then I saw them. Figures sitting inside the carriages. Not just Evelyn and Matthew. Others. Dozens. Faces pale, mouths slack, eyes glowing faintly with a light that wasn't their own. The wheel turned slowly, deliberately, as if displaying its collection. I shouted Evelyn's name. One of the figures, her, jerked slightly. Her lips moved, barely forming words. Pierce. But something else shifted with her. The shadows inside the carriages weren't passengers. They were attendants. Looming, skeletal things draped in carnival rags, their limbs long enough to reach across carriages. They caressed the children's faces, whispering into their ears. And when I yelled again, the shadows turned their heads toward me. Every one of them. The sky darkened. It wasn't clouds. It was the eclipse. The first sliver of sun vanished behind the moon, casting the carnival into unnatural twilight. The rides groaned in unison, chains rattling, gears shrieking. The midway pulsed as though the earth beneath it had a heartbeat. And the air thickened. Not just with darkness. With presence. I felt it before I saw it, the same way you feel a thunderstorm about to break. The Ferris wheel shuddered. Something stepped out from behind it. It was taller than the wheel itself, a silhouette at first, vast, jointed wrong, hunched forward. Its head scraped the sky, horns spiraling in grotesque curves. Its arms dangled, fingers brushing the ground. The caretaker's words echoed in my head. The hungry come. The figure bent, peering over the midway, its face hidden in shadow. But I didn't need details to know. It had noticed me. And it was smiling. I stumbled backward, gun raised though it felt absurd now. Bullets weren't going to fix this. But instinct kept me armed. The Ferris wheel sped up, its rattling shrieks mixing with the music. The towering thing reached a hand across the midway, long fingers brushing rooftops, curling around the carousel as if it were a toy. The horses screamed, not mechanical, not fake. They screamed like animals being torn apart. And then the caretaker appeared. He stood in the center of the midway, arms raised, coat billowing in the rising wind. "You weren't supposed to fight it!" he cried. His voice carried inhuman strength, echoing off every surface. "You were supposed to witness. To record. The carnival needs an audience, detective. That's all you were ever meant to be." The thing leaned closer, its massive face lowering toward us. And in the reflection of its endless eyes, I saw Evelyn and Matthew, trapped not in the Ferris wheel, not in the posters, but in the very shadow that blanketed the carnival. The air grew heavier with every heartbeat, thick with dust and ash that wasn't there before. The sky was almost gone now, just a sliver of burning sun left above the carnival, swallowed by the eclipse. The caretaker stood like a prophet in rags, arms stretched, eyes wild. His voice cut through the roar of the rides and the groans of the earth. "This is the hour! The veil thins, the feast begins. Don't you see, detective? You should be honored. You'll be remembered as the last man to witness the carnival's return." My revolver shook in my hand. I wasn't pointing it at the towering shape. I knew bullets wouldn't do a damn thing to that. Instead, I leveled it at the caretaker. "Where are the kids?" My voice cracked in the unnatural wind. "What have you done with Evelyn and Matthew?" He smiled. His teeth were black, chipped, as though rotting from the inside out. "They're not lost," he said softly, almost tenderly. "They've been chosen. They'll never grow old, never wither. They'll dance in the shadow of the carnival forever." I fired. The shot tore through his shoulder, spinning him half around. He staggered but didn't fall. The sound of my gunshot was swallowed by the Ferris wheel's shriek, as if the carnival itself devoured the noise. The caretaker straightened, blood dripping down his sleeve, and grinned wider. "Flesh means nothing here, detective. I told you, this is no place for the living. Not anymore." The massive silhouette loomed closer, lowering its head. Finally, I saw its face. It wasn't a face at all. It was a mask. A huge, porcelain mask painted like a carnival clown, cheeks bright red, lips stretched in a smile that went too wide. But behind the mask were eyes. Not human eyes. Depthless, starless pits that swallowed light. The mask twitched, cracking slightly, and through the fractures, something wet and alive pressed forward, straining to emerge. My throat tightened. The caretaker raised his hands toward it, as if in worship. "The ringmaster," he whispered, "returned to claim his audience." The Ferris wheel groaned. Its carriages swung violently as the skeletal attendants inside began to climb out, spindly arms unfolding like broken marionettes. They scuttled down the spokes, their limbs bending backward, heads jerking with spasms. They landed on the midway one after another, dozens of them, circling me in twitching steps. Their jaws hung slack, voices leaking out in whispers that weren't language but rhythm, like laughter played backward. And then I saw her. Evelyn. She was pressed against the bars of one of the carriages, face pale, eyes wide. Matthew was slumped beside her, barely moving. "Pierce!" she screamed. Her voice was raw, desperate. "Help us!" The skeletal attendants jerked their heads toward her, then toward me, as if savoring the connection. I ran forward, pushing past the stalls, firing into the horde. My bullets tore through them, but they didn't bleed. They cracked like mannequins, porcelain shells splintering. Inside each hollow chest was not bone or organs but a darkness that writhed, a swarm of something that wasn't insects and wasn't smoke, but both. Every time one fell, the pieces scuttled toward the Ferris wheel and crawled back into the shadows. The carnival was recycling its soldiers. The caretaker laughed, blood soaking his coat. "Fight all you want, detective. The carnival doesn't lose. You'll run out of bullets long before it runs out of masks." I ignored him. My eyes were fixed on the Ferris wheel. Evelyn's pale hand reached between the bars again. I had to reach her. I sprinted, weaving through the collapsing stalls and snapping shadows, until I reached the base of the wheel. The metal was hot to the touch, vibrating with unnatural energy. It was alive, pulsing like a vein. The skeletal things hissed, closing in. One of them lunged. Its hand clamped onto my wrist, bone fingers cold as ice. I slammed the revolver against its jaw and pulled the trigger. The shot exploded through its skull, porcelain shards flying. I tore free and grabbed the metal framework, beginning to climb. The Ferris wheel turned slowly, grinding, as if resisting me. My boots slipped on rusted beams slick with condensation. The higher I climbed, the stronger the wind became. The eclipse above was nearly complete now, just a thin ring of fire around the moon. "Pierce!" Evelyn's voice again. Closer. I was nearly at her carriage. But the caretaker's voice carried up after me. "You can't save her. She belongs to him now. They all do." I glanced down. He was at the base of the wheel, arms spread, blood smeared across his face. Behind him, the towering ringmaster leaned forward, mask cracking further. Its massive hand reached across the carnival, fingers curling around tents and booths like paper toys. The Ferris wheel shuddered violently, nearly throwing me off. I clung tight, hard hammering, forcing myself upward until I reached the carriage. Evelyn pressed against the bars, tears streaking her face. "Pierce, please, Matthew, he's not waking up." I yanked at the door. Rust held it shut. I braced my boots against the beam and pulled with everything I had. The metal screamed, and then gave. The door tore open. I reached in, grabbing Evelyn's wrist, then Matthew's limp form. She pulled him toward me, voice shaking with sobs. For one brief moment, hope surged. I was going to get them out. But then the shadow inside the carriage stirred. A skeletal attendant crouched there, head twisted backward, grin painted too wide. It lunged, grabbing Matthew by the leg, yanking him deeper into the dark corner. "No!" Evelyn screamed. I fired point blank. The bullet shattered its skull, the hollow shell collapsing, but the swarm inside surged upward, black tendrils wrapping around Matthew's arms. The Ferris wheel shrieked, spinning faster, as if trying to swallow them both. And then, above the roar, the ringmaster's voice came at last. Not laughter, not whispering, but words. "Stay, detective." The voice was vast, booming, echoing across every surface of the carnival. My blood turned cold. "Stay. Join the show." The Ferris wheel spun faster, its shrieks grinding through the night like a giant saw blade. My arms burned as I clung to the frame, the metal shuddering beneath me. Evelyn clutched Matthew, screaming against the storm, her hair whipped across her face. And above us, blotting out the sky, the ringmaster leaned forward. Its mask had split wide open, pieces falling like porcelain snow, revealing the writhing mass beneath, a void filled with teeth that were not teeth, and eyes that blinked in random patterns across the darkness. The voice thundered again, deeper now, closer. "Join! Stay! Laugh. The skeletal attendants below swarmed the wheel, climbing after me, their limbs bending in grotesque angles. Their jaws clicked like chattering teeth, echoing the rhythm of the carnival music that was now playing backward, an old calliope melody warped into madness. Evelyn sobbed, clutching Matthew as the black tendrils coiled tighter around him, dragging his body toward the dark corner of the carriage. "No!" she screamed. "Don't let them take him!" I leveled my revolver, hands trembling. I fired again and again into the tendrils, but the swarm only parted briefly, reforming, stronger, hungrier. My bullets were running out. "Pierce!" Evelyn's voice broke through the chaos. "Cut them! Cut the wires!" I froze, following her gaze. The Ferris wheel wasn't just spinning. Its framework was strung with thick, black cables, humming with energy, the lifeline of the entire carnival. The swarm pulsed with them, feeding, controlling. I holstered my gun and pulled the hunting knife from my belt. The skeletal attendants were almost on me, clattering across the beams, jaws clicking in excitement. I swung the blade hard against the nearest cable. Sparks exploded, a scream ripping through the carnival as if I had cut through flesh instead of wire. The ringmaster's massive form recoiled, its mask fracturing further. I swung again, hacking another cable loose. The Ferris wheel jolted, throwing attendants screaming into the air. The caretaker's voice shrieked from below, torn between rage and terror. "No! You fool! You'll kill us all! That's the plan!" I shouted. I hacked again. And again. Each strike made the world shake, the eclipse burning brighter overhead. The ringmaster's enormous hand reached toward me, stretching unnaturally long, fingers curling like ropes around the wheel. I didn't stop. The final cable snapped with a sound like a gunshot. The Ferris wheel let out one last metallic wail before collapsing inward. The entire structure imploded, carriages snapping free, attendants tumbling into dust. The swarm screamed, scattering into the air like a black storm. The ringmaster howled, an unearthly sound that split my skull. Its form cracked apart, the mask shattering completely, revealing nothing inside but an abyss of gnashing void. For a moment, I thought it would consume everything. And then the eclipse broke. Light returned. The moon slid past the sun, and golden rays pierced the carnival. The ringmaster convulsed, its enormous body collapsing into shards of porcelain and black ash. The skeletal attendants burst into pieces, vanishing like smoke in sunlight. The tents melted into the ground, rides folding in on themselves until nothing remained but broken earth and silence. I clung to the wreckage of the wheel, breath ragged, Evelyn's cries filling my ears. I pulled her and Matthew free, dragging them down as the remnants of the carnival sank into dust. We stumbled across the empty field. The carnival was gone, every booth, every ride, every nightmare erased as though it had never been there. Only the smell of burnt iron lingered in the air. Evelyn clutched Matthew's limp body, whispering his name over and over. Slowly he stirred, coughing weakly, eyes fluttering open. Her sobs of relief nearly broke me. I scanned the field one last time. No caretaker. No ringmaster. Just silence. But silence rarely means safety. I holstered my revolver, my hands shaking. Evelyn looked up at me. "It's over, isn't it?" I didn't answer right away. The sunlight bathed the field, warm and steady, but in the distance, I thought I heard something faint. A laugh. Not close. Not loud. But there. Lingering. "Go home," I told her softly. "Don't look back." We walked away from the empty grounds, the ruins of the carnival shrinking behind us. And though I left it in ashes, I couldn't shake the feeling that somewhere, beyond the veil of the eclipse, The ringmaster was waiting for another audience. Another show. And when the shadow returns, so will I.